Shiki is a good-for-nothing loser who decided to farm aura while his father died protecting him. However, when he learns that he is the child of a powerful demon, he enrolls in a demon academy to get more powerful and avenge his late dad. It all begins when Shiki sits in his room enjoying himself, until his adopted father, Tsuyoshi, barges into the room to hit him in the head for getting expelled from school. Instead of feeling remorseful, he trash talks his father, and before getting hit again, Shiki jumps into the corner of the room. Tsuyoshi questions the guns in Shiki's room since they run a liquor business, not a weapon shop. Shiki ignores the question, and before they can get down to further argument, Tsuyoshi receives a call at the counter. Even though they are not blood-related, the two seem to be close as Tsuyoshi stares at a picture of young Shiki sitting on the counter. After he is done with the call, he drives off while the piece of trash, Shiki, is aiming at the bullseye inside his room with a gun instead of regular darts. Just as he is about to pull the trigger, he hears an explosion outside his room. He runs to the window to investigate, but he gets pulled outside by a black mist. Shiki watches as a scary dude, Samedare, emerges from the black mist. Just then, Tsuyoshi appears out of nowhere, and he runs Samedare into the store with his car. Shiki starts asking questions, but his father screams at him to enter the vehicle and asks questions later. Tsuyoshi heads to the highway, and he gets bombarded with several questions from Shiki, who wants to know what is going on. Tired of hearing Shiki nag, Tsuyoshi reveals that Shiki is a descendant of the Oni, while the scary dude who is after him descended from Momotaro. Before Shiki can hear further explanation, Samedare catches up to the speeding vehicle. Tsuyoshi manages to dodge the blade attacks aimed at him, and when the vehicle is engulfed in black mist, he is forced to drive into an abandoned warehouse. Shiki and Tsuyoshi both run out of the car, but before Tsuyoshi can reach Shiki, the vehicle explodes, ultimately distracting him. By the time he turns around, Shiki has disappeared. He looks around to see the trail of the black mist entering the warehouse, and Tsuyoshi follows it. Inside the warehouse, Shiki is entangled in a web made from the black mist. Samedare explains that he is from the Momotaro agency, and before he can continue his boring explanation that no one asked for, Tsuyoshi enters the warehouse, too. Tsuyoshi then continues the explanation with his cool fatherly voice, telling Shiki that the Momotaro and Oni are enemies. They have been at war for generations, and Momotaro has formed the Momotaro agency while the Oni are basically hiding among humans. Shiki is still confused about everything he just heard, but his father tells him to keep his mouth shut while the adults settle their differences. Samedare dashes toward Tsuyoshi, but he manifests the black mist and blocks Samadere's attack. It turns out that Tsuyoshi was a former member of the Momotaro agency, and he and Samedare were colleagues. While hanging from the web, Shiki watches in confusion as the two adults blabber around about their past. Samedare lets his former colleague know that he is going to be eliminated for shielding an Oni, and it escalates into a proper sword fight between the two. But instead of old-fashioned steel swords, they are going at each other with weapons made from the ugly black mist coming out of the old, fragile bodies. Tsuyoshi puts up a good fight against Samedare, but he leaves himself open when he leaps towards Samedare in rage. Samedare dodges the attack, and before Tsuyoshi can react, he is cut by Samadere's double swords. Shiki watches as his father crashes to the ground in a pool of his own blood. Samedare walks over to Tsuyoshi, asking him why he protected a kid. He obviously knew it was an Oni, and Tsuyoshi screams at Samedare, letting him know that he has no reason other than the fact that Shiki is his son. Realizing that Tsuyoshi is a lost cause, Samedare prepares to end him by pushing his sword into his head. All of Shiki's senses go into hyper mode when he sees that his father is about to be sent to the afterlife. Without realizing it, he subconsciously awakens the Oni blood living inside of him, and he breaks free from the web holding him down. Samedare hears Shiki screaming, but by the time he turns around, he has disappeared. Shiki reappears behind Samedare with a bunch of guns made from blood. He almost relieves Samedare of his head, but he manages to block the bullets thanks to his fast reflexes. Shiki disappears again, and this time, he reappears on the ceiling. Shiki has completely transformed into an ugly, scary Oni with pointed horns coming out of his head. With the Oni blood running through his veins, Shiki runs around like the Flash. He jumps towards Samedare, attacking blindly, but he gets his arm cut off. Shiki retreats backward and, in under 10 seconds, he regrows his arm. Shiki takes things up a notch as he manifests a bunch of weapons ranging from automatic rifles to missile launchers. Samadair finds himself blocking a barrage of bullets from Shiki. Samadair almost gets blown off by a rocket, but he dodges the rocket, thanks to his flexibility. The rocket explodes behind him, leaving Samadair panting like a deer that just escaped a cheetah's grasp. However, Shiki is not done with him as he continues another wave of attack. After running around for a few more seconds, Shiki catches him and pins him to the ground. Shiki has a bunch of guns aimed at his head. He fires the weapon at point-blank range, but due to an intense help from plot armor, Samadair survives. After this, Shiki transforms back into his regular self. He is totally confused, and this is normal for Honest after they transform. While sitting there in confusion, Samadair arms himself with his sword and goes after Shiki. However, Tsuyoshi jumps in, and he gets punctured instead of Shiki. Samadair is shocked that Tsuyoshi is sacrificing himself for a kid until the end, and Tsuyoshi reveals that he was happy to live a normal life, even if it was short. Samadair scoffs and gives up on his hunt. He disappears from the warehouse, leaving Shiki and his father. Tsuyoshi falls into Shiki's hands while apologizing for keeping things from him. He then tells him to get stronger to beat the Momotaro and the Oni so he can live freely. Shiki screams at Tsuyoshi, telling him that he is not asking for some final speech from him. He pulls him up with the intention of getting help, and Tsuyoshi smiles, realizing how much his son loves him. He loses his breath and falls to the ground while Shiki weeps over the loss of his father. Suddenly, a dude in skate boots appears behind Shiki, and before he can react, Shiki gets hit in the back of the head, ultimately knocking him out. Meanwhile, the higher-ups in Momotaro are a bunch of mummified individuals, and they are hellbent on wiping out the Honest. Shiki wakes to find himself in a big hall, tied to a chair, and his mouth covered with a cloth. Beside him is the strange dude doing a weird set of push-ups with his umbrella. The strange dude realizes that Shiki is awake, and he stops what he is doing. He introduces himself as Nato and reveals that he is also an Oni. He shows Shiki that he is not lying by casually displaying his horns. Nato explains to Shiki that his father's body is safely stored somewhere, and he only brought Shiki with him for two reasons, which are evaluation and retrieval. Nato already has a board ready, and he drags it closer to explain the situation to Shiki. He lets him know that Samadair is from the Momotaro agency, and to counter their strength, Nato is in charge of finding Oni who have just awakened, just like Shiki. He then tests them to see if they are fit to join the Oni agency. After using some seconds to explain this to Shiki, Nato takes off the mouth cover, urging Shiki to ask any more questions that he might have. Once the gag comes off, Shiki screams at Nato, demanding that he untie him. He also asks where his father is. Nato wears a look of disappointment when he hears the words coming out of Shiki's mouth. He reminds Shiki that he already told him that his father's body is safe, and he just assumes Shiki lacks the brain power to comprehend what is happening. The two start arguing with each other, but Shiki figures out that he is at a disadvantage, and he tries to take the diplomatic route. He smiles at Nato, but Nato sees through him, telling him that his face looks absolutely creepy. Since Shiki is not getting the hang of it, Nato decides that it is time he takes the desperate route. He removes his tie and moves behind Shiki. He wraps his tie around Shiki's neck, and he starts to choke him with it. He lets Shiki know that he has just two options. It's either he saves himself by using his Oni blood or dies. Shiki struggles so hard to break free, and in the process, blood drips out of his eyes, nose, and mouth. Instead of a magnificent transformation, Shiki passes out. Just when Nato thinks it is over for Shiki, he notices that there is blood on the floor. Nato almost gets caught in Shiki's transformation, but he moves out of the way pretty fast. Shiki leaps onto him and rains down bullets on him, but when the smoke clears, Nato is standing, and he is totally unharmed. Nato is protected by his Oni blood that has taken the shape of an umbrella. Nato decides to teach Shiki a valuable lesson, but he is sure he won't remember the lesson once he leaves the Berserker mode. Moments later, Shiki wakes up in a state of confusion just as before. The entire room has been turned upside down as a result of the battle between him and Nato. Nato lets Shiki know that he is not qualified to be in the agency since he can't control his own blood without going berserk. Shiki figures out that Nato is insanely strong, and since he needs to get stronger to get his revenge, Shiki swallows his pride. He bows to Nato, begging him to make him his underling so he can get the power to avenge his dead father. Nato straight up rejects Shiki's plea, telling him that he is useless. Shiki is utterly pissed that Nato let him grovel on the ground just to get rejected. Nato then cuts his finger using his ring, telling Shiki that it is time for him to die. Shiki gets back on his feet and tries transforming by dragging his hand through the floor. He then runs toward Nato, and Nato believes that he has all the channels blocked until Shiki shocks him by doing the unexpected. He jumps over Nato's spike umbrella and appears above him with one of his arms turned into a gun. He fires the weapon, but as expected, Nato survives. Nato is ready to annihilate Shiki, but Shiki's stubbornness allows him to get his berserker mode under control. This shocks Nato, who is forced to ask Shiki how he did it. Shiki mumbles up some really boring and trashy logic on how he did it, and Nato figures that Shiki basically used his emotions. Nato tries to explain why emotions are bad when it comes to the use of Oni blood. In Nato's head, he has perfect control over his emotions, but in Shiki's head, it is a total mess. The berserker mode is running around in his head, trying to terminate its rational self. Even though Nato won't admit it, he is impressed that Shiki is using his raw instinct to suppress the berserker mode. Shiki begs him to take him in, but as usual, Nato denies his request. Nato transforms his umbrella into a spear, and he moves over to Shiki. Shiki freezes in fear, believing that he is done for. However, Nato smashes the ground with the spear instead of Shiki's head. He lets Shiki know that he has no intentions of accepting him as his underling, but he is interested in taking Shiki as his student. Shiki is shocked, but before he gets the time to process things, Nato tells him that it is time he explains what is going on to him. Apparently, they are on an island called Onigashima, and the center of the island is a school built to train Oni prospects, Rezetsu Academy. Nato mentions that he is Shiki's homeroom teacher, and he is going to start living in a dorm while training every day, so he can get the chance to fight the Momotaro agency. The amount of information Nato just uploaded into Shiki's deadbeat brain almost causes his head to explode. Shiki then asks Nato if he can actually get stronger in the academy, and Nato replies that his path is in his hands. Shortly afterward, Nato takes Shiki to his dorm room to change. Shiki complains about the ugly horns on his head, and Nato tells him that he will learn to hide them over time. Shiki steps out of the room, dressed in the academy's uniform. Nato tells him that his father's body is in the morgue, and to stop him from falling into despair, Nato instigates a race between them. Nato threatens Shiki with expulsion if he gets to the classroom before him. Shiki manages to catch up to Nato even though he is on skates. He stands in front of the door, trying to think of a good and proper entrance, but Nato just kicks him into the room. Shiki's nose starts to bleed, and the first person his dull brain directs him to is the dude in a nose mask, Jin. Shiki makes fun of Jin for not having horns, but Jin purposely brings them out just to take a dig at Shiki, calling him a rookie for not knowing how to retract or bring out his horns at will. Also sitting in the class are a bunch of other weirdos like Shiki. There is Ikari, Kuina, Juji, Homer, Rokuro. Nato stops their weird get-together, telling the students that he has something else planned for the day. He lets them know that they are going to play a game of tag, leaving Shiki dumbfounded. Nato takes them to the field where he explains the rules of the game to them. Shiki excitedly blows his mouth, saying it is a regular game of tag, but Nato drops a bombshell on the students, letting them know that anyone who gets caught will be expelled. Nato mentions that they are free to use whatever method to get him, but if they go berserk mode, he will have no choice but to do the same. Since Nato will not be using his powers, Jin mentions that there is the possibility of them terminating him. Nato is aware of this, and he promises that whoever ends him gets a chance to immediately graduate and be assigned a unit of their choice. With this, Nato raises the stakes of the game to try and push everyone to their limit. However, there is one more rule. Nato has 2 balls in his hands, and he tells his students that they are going to need one of the balls to pass the test. He throws the balls into the woods where the game will be played. He lets them know that reaching the goal without a ball is a waste of effort. The students then mention that there are just 2 balls. Nato reveals that he will be splitting them into 3 groups. The first group is Homar, Jin, and Shiki. Upon hearing the rules, it dawns on the students that at least 3 of them will be expelled. Nato then opens the gate, telling the first group to enter, and he will follow them 15 minutes later. Shiki has never had a girl speak to him before, and he is shocked when Homer walks up to him. Shiki almost loses his entire existence just from Homer speaking to him. Jin, on the other hand, couldn't care less when she tried talking to him. Homer starts crying, and this causes an argument between Shiki and Jin. Shiki says he has a reason to graduate, but Jin calls his reason trash. While the group is busy arguing among themselves, Nato reminds them that their time is running out. Shiki and his group head into the woods, and Shiki wastes no time going after Jin because he called his goal meaningless. Jin tells Shiki that he has no time to waste, and to scare Shiki off, he opens his nose mask to unveil his scarred, ugly mouth. Instead of being scared, Shiki still trash talks Jin. Jin then cuts his hand to activate his blood. He uses his blood to manifest a saw, shocking Shiki. He tells Shiki to back off, but Shiki remains unmoved even in the face of danger. Shiki reveals that he is trying to graduate so he can become a warrior to avenge his father. Jin hears this, and he ultimately reveals that their goals are completely opposite of each other. Shiki tries to control his blood and form a weapon, but he fails at this. He then resorts to the use of a stick against Jin, but Jin easily cuts off the tree, using his saw. Meanwhile, Homer is walking around the woods aimlessly. She has no direction of where she is going, and because of how empty-headed she is, she walks past the ball without even realizing it. Shiki continues fighting Jin even though he is at a disadvantage. He tries releasing his blood art, but everything he does is not working. He just gets trashed around by Jin. Shiki gets knocked to the ground, but instead of giving up, he stands up again. Jin is tired of playing his games, and he attacks Shiki with a giant saw. Just then, Homer appears out of nowhere, running toward Shiki without realizing that there is a giant blade behind her. Shiki is able to act fast, and he saves the girl, but he gets cut on the arm. Homer sees this and falls to her knees, begging Shiki to forgive her because she is the one who caused him to get hurt. Without even realizing it, Homer activates the power of her blood. A pool of blood flows out of Homer, and from the blood emerges a giant titan. The titan covers Homer as if to protect her from danger. Realizing the danger posed by the blood titan, Homer tells Jin and Shiki to run or else the titan is going to annihilate them. While this is happening, Nato is watching the kids from a distance. Jin engages the titan in combat, but because of its size, Jin fails to take it down. Shiki then tries getting Homer away from the titan, but the titan uses her hand to guard the girl. Jin is surprised to see this as he wonders if Homer's blood is moving independently. Just then, the titan unleashes a wave of blood that hits Jin and Shiki. Even though he just sustained damage from the titan's attack, Shiki still stands up to try and defend Homer. Shiki is not ready to see someone else die in front of him. Realizing that Shiki won't give up, the titan lets off a huge scream that rocks the entire area. Nato sees this but decides to stay back and watch how the kids are going to handle the titan. Frustrated, Shiki cuts his hand, hoping that his blood will manifest, but nothing happens. Nato knows that it can't work since the one that worked for him the last time was just a lucky shot. Shiki gets thrown around by the titan, leaving him totally broken. Shiki has never lost a fight in the past, but after the revelation that he is an Oni, everything has been going sideways. He watched as his father was sent to the afterlife, and now he can't help a poor girl. Shiki starts crying while asking the anime divine beings the reason he is so weak. Jin knows that he is no match for the titan, but he is still not ready to give up. He creates two different types of weapons with his hands, impressing Nato, who is busy watching. Apparently, the Oni blood is connected to the brain, and it forms whatever shape or weapon the user wants or needs. Jin continues fighting the titan while Shiki tries to figure out how to use his blood. Suddenly, it dawns on Shiki that all the weapons Jin has made so far are for cutting. Homer's blood weapon also appears like that of a titan protecting a kid. With this, Shiki finally figures out the trick behind it. Jin almost gets close to the titan, but the titan screams at him, rupturing his eardrum. Jin is thrown backwards, and Nato realizes that he might have to interfere after all. Just then, Shiki draws the titan's attention to himself. Jin and Nato are shocked to see Jin wielding an anti-tank sniper rifle. Shiki aims for the titan's head, and with just a shot, he blows the titan to smithereens. Both Jin and Nato are shocked when this happens. Jin is even more impressed since Shiki's power not only took down the titan, but it also changed the weather, and it started raining. Shiki is totally exhausted, but he still tries to stand up to check on Homer. However, he loses control of his body and crashes to the ground. Nato appears, telling Shiki that he just discharged a high amount of power, which is why he is exhausted. Nato is impressed when he hears Shiki telling him to check on Homer instead of him. Suddenly, Nato gets attacked from his blind spot, but his experience saves him as he is able to block the attack from Jin. Nato calls Jin's attention to Homer, but Jin doesn't care as he is hellbent on terminating Nato. Once Nato realizes that Jin won't back off, he gets serious. He arms his umbrella, which turns out not to be a regular umbrella. Jin dashes at Nato, but he parries all of his attacks. Nato then switches the umbrella and shoots out a smoke canister from it. This blocks Jin's vision, and while he is still trying to pinpoint where Nato is, he gets sniped. The shot hits him on his arm, forcing him to retreat behind a tree. Nato reveals that he is going to be keeping his distance since Jin's attack is all about close range. Jin then shocks Nato when he runs out from behind cover and launches his blood at him like projectiles, forcing Nato to also change positions. Nato is surprised to find out that Jin also has a counter for long-range attacks. Jin goes after Nato again, and even though Jin is fast with his punches, Nato is faster. He dodges Jin's attack easily and then releases a grenade toward Jin. Jin has no way of dodging the grenade, and he believes that he is done for until the grenade goes off. But it turns out to be a smoke grenade. This time around, Nato charges at Jin at full speed, and he delivers a rib-cracking punch that sends Jin flying. Nato mentions that Jin failed to assess his strengths and weaknesses, which is why he lost the fight. Nato then transforms the umbrella into a canopy to restrict Jin's movements. Jin struggles to get out from under the umbrella, and Nato asks him if he is that desperate to see his father. Jin is shocked to hear this, and even Shiki, who has been watching, gets curious. Nato looked into Jin, and he found out that his father is a Momotaro. Jin angrily narrates how his father is the one who wiped out his family and even gave him the scars on his body. The anger from explaining this helps Jin escape the canopy, but Nato just smashes him to the ground. Nato gives him important life advice, telling him to live to achieve his goal instead of acting recklessly and dying in the end. After this, Nato ties Jin to a tree, and he puts a call through to the school nurse to help Homer. Shiki is weak, but he manages to get on his feet. Nato then tells him that he has just a little over 5 minutes to complete the game. Nato then shocks Shiki by revealing that he has one of the balls with him. Shiki is left with two options. It's either he fights Nato to get the ball from him, or he takes a gamble and runs into the woods to find the other ball. Without thinking twice, he dashes into the woods, and Nato follows. However, Shiki tricks Nato without him realizing it. Shiki crawls back to where Jin is tied, and he proposes a deal. He offers to save him so that they can both take on Nato to get the ball from him. Jin's ego is as fast as his sausage as he initially refuses to help. Moments later, Nato spots Shiki running through the woods, and he ambushes him. Unknown to him, Shiki and Jin have managed to make a deal. Shiki acts as the bait while Jin appears from behind when Nato least expects it. Even with this, Nato is still able to dodge Jin's attack. But just then, he notices that Jin is holding the rope he used to tie him. Before Nato can process what is happening, he is already wrapped up in the rope, and Jin hands the other end of the rope to Shiki. Together, they start pulling Nato, but they can't get him to move from where he is standing because his skates are caught in the mud. Nato is actually impressed with their tactics, as he knows that it would have worked, given that they are not exhausted. Jin then throws a blood projectile at Shiki to try to get him off balance. This works, and Shiki takes the chance to go after Nato. He is able to pry the ball away from him, and it falls to the ground. With this, Nato believes that the two will start fighting over who will get to pick the ball, and in that moment, he plans to take them down and retrieve the ball. Suddenly, Shiki shocks him when he tells Jin to pick the ball and run to the goal. Shiki starts trolling Nato about their flawless plan. Just then, Nato hits the airhead with the most obvious rule that he clearly forgot. Nato reminds Shiki that Jin will get to pass the exam if he reaches the goal with the ball. But on the other hand, Shiki will fail, and anyone who fails will be expelled. Shiki falls to his knees, crying that he is done for. Suddenly, Jin turns around and starts heading toward Shiki. He claims that he doesn't want to owe Shiki any favor, which is why he turned back. Just as he is about to reach Shiki, a pig comes running to them. Shiki and Jin are confused, but Nato explains that the pig is called Muku. Muku carries information for the agency, and it can run up to 300 kilometers per hour. Nato checks the information Muku brought, and it turns out that it is a cry for help from the agency in Kyoto. The trio then returns to the starting line, where the others are waiting. Nato tells them that class has been cancelled because they are all heading to Kyoto to render aid. On the ship to Kyoto, Shiki celebrates after he finally gets the hang of how to retract his horns. Nato trolls him, telling him to stop screaming since he is the last among his peers to figure it out. Nato then mentions that they are heading to Kyoto to offer support and not join the battle against Momotaro. Nato has them dressed in funny uniforms so that they can be portrayed as regular students. Nato explains that every agency in every municipality has 2 units. There is a battle unit, and they are the ones who fight on the front lines against Momotaro. The second unit is the support unit that provides aid for other Oni, like healthcare and physical aids. Since Oni can't go to regular hospitals, they are also in charge of rescue during a battle. Nato knows that Jin is itching to go against Samadare, but he lets him know that he is not in Kyoto since Momotaro agents also have their respective jurisdiction. Soon afterward, the group arrives in Kyoto, and Nato leads them to what appears to be a regular restaurant, but underneath it is the Oni agency. Meanwhile, the captain of the Momotaro agency, Tsubakiri, and his deputy, Yomogi, are busy trashing out Oni and even civilians. Tsubakiri's love for experiments forces him to start looking for a female Oni that he can play around with. Assisting him in taking down the Oni is a chimera that he made from a blend of dog, monkey, and pheasant. Just as expected, he calls the chimera ugly. Even Yomogi is tired of Tsubakiri's thirst for violence. While the two are discussing, there is an Oni kid hiding in the corner. The kid heaves a sigh of relief when he thinks Tsubakiri is gone, but he suddenly appears beside him. Tsubakiri has no regard for even a kid as he kicks him around. He then uses his Momotaro power, which allows him to control corpses, to choke the kid till he stops breathing. Even Yomogi is creeped out by Tsubakiri's power to control corpses. On the other hand, Nato had led his students to the Oni base under the city. At the base, they meet a fun guy, Kyoka, and he is the captain of the support unit. After some unnecessary chat, Nato tells his students that he is heading to the front lines. As expected, most of the students offer to go with him since they don't think they can stay with Kyoka, who is just a straight-up freak. However, they have no choice but to do as their teacher says. Nato leaves, telling Kyoka that he is free to use the students whichever way he sees fit. Just then, a nurse appears from inside the ward, and the moment she sees the students, she tells them to get changed since their help is needed. After getting into their support uniforms, they enter the ward where wounded patients from the front lines are all lined up. Shiki is horrified when he sees a patient who was just brought in. He has lost his arms and legs, and even his lungs are extensively damaged. With the level of damage sustained, the nurse estimates that he has no more than 3 minutes left to live. However, Kyoka assures him that he will not die. Shiki doesn't think it's possible to save the dude, and he tells Kyoka to stop giving false hopes, but Kyoka lets him know that he is a talk and do guy. Just then, body bags are wheeled in and attached to Kyoka's body so he can show the kids what he can do. On the surface, Nato runs into Tsubakiri. The Oni agents are all hyped up when they realize that Nato has joined the battle. Nato shows his hand when he unleashes his blood power, firing explosive arrows at Tsubakiri. However, Tsubakiri survives the attack, using dead Oni agents as a body shield. Tsubakiri mentions that he would like to know the Oni base, but Nato simply replies that he has no idea where it is. However, Nato is worried since Tsubakiri is a freak, and he doesn't just say things without a reason. Tsubakiri suggests that they call it a day, but Nato lets him know that their battle is not over until he sends him to the afterlife. Back in the underground, Kyoka tells the wounded man to pick either his arms or legs so he can heal them. The wounded man then chooses his arms since his desire is to be able to hold his kids. Kyoka warns him that the procedure will be painful, and after the warning, he cuts his hand to let out a huge flow of blood into the patient's mouth. Kyoka reveals that his blood is not for combat, but it helps with Oni recovery. Once the effects of the blood start to kick in, The nurse tells the boys to grab the patient and hold him down. They do as told, and in no time, the blood in the bags starts to dry up. The nurse then orders the rest of the students to go to the blood bank and get more blood bags that they can use. In no time, they return with blood bags to refill the already drying ones. Moments later, the severed arms start twitching. This freaks Shiki out, and he jumps backward in fear. Kyoka explains that cell regeneration has started, and the students watch as the arms regrow. After this, his lungs and chest also heal. Once the arms and lungs are healed, Kyoka stops with the treatment. Shiki is impressed by this, and his curiosity makes him ask Kyoka if the man's legs will also heal. Kyoka says yes, but adds that it is going to take time. Apparently, a large transfusion at once will cause the man to develop antibodies, which will prevent his body from responding to treatment again. Kyoka then assures the man that he will be retired from the battle unit so he can join the support unit, where he is going to have time to play around with his kids. The man breaks down in tears, thanking Kyoka for saving his life. Kyoka then uses this opportunity to give a speech, telling the group that they might all be edging to join the front lines, but they should always remember that there is a support unit behind them to keep them safe. Kyoka's speech manages to rile the guys up, and Kyoka smiles from ear to ear, boasting about his popularity. Shiki makes a fist bump, telling Kyoka that he is ready to do whatever it is that he wants him to. Just then, Kyoka informs Shiki that he has a different task for him. Shiki's excitement immediately crashes to the ground. Kyoka then shows Shiki a kid named Mei. He wants Shiki to look after Mei since she is alone. She was brought to the base the day before the attack, and since then, her parents have not been found. Shiki assures Kyoka that he is going to handle the situation. Shiki walks over to where the kid is sitting and starts making dry jokes to try and get Mei to speak. Shiki finally gets Mei to speak when he mentions an interesting location. Mei reveals that she has no idea where this place is, and Shiki mentions that the place is talked about in textbooks, but unfortunately, Mei has no formal education. Shiki and Mei are just trying to get along when more bodies are brought into the base, and this about 30 bodies. Everything turns upside down when Mei spots her parents' bodies among the corpses brought into the base. She weeps bitterly, leaving Kyoka and Shiki in a sad state. On the surface, Tsubakiri reveals something sinister to Nato. He tells him that he intentionally left the bodies of their dead comrades lying around so that they can find them. These are corpses that already have Tsubakiri's signature all over them, and he can control them whenever he wants. Nato gasps in shock and fear when he hears this. Just then, Tsubakiri starts to control the corpses, and Mei gets grabbed by her father's corpse. Kyoka immediately realizes what is going on, and he pulls out 2 surgical knives. He tells Shiki to cover Mei's eyes. Shiki does as told, and Kyoka pushes the blades into the corpse's brain, ultimately ending it. At the same time, the other corpses that have just been brought in start twitching. Just then, Shiki gets grabbed from behind by Mei's mother. Kyoka wants to help, but 3 undead enter the room and tackle him to the ground. Chaos ensues in the entire building as the corpses run riot. Mei starts crying, begging her undead mother to let Shiki go. Shiki whips out a gun that was given to him by Nato while they were on the ship. Nato tells him that the bullets in the gun have been infused with his blood, which makes it more lethal than regular guns. Realizing that he is about to be choked to death, Shiki has no choice but to cover Mei's eyes by drawing her close before delivering a perfect shot to her mum's head, thus ending her suffering. After catching his breath, he helps shoot down the undead, grabbing onto Kyoka. He helps him up, and Kyoka tells Shiki to help clear the base of the undead while he and the staff get the patients to safety. Meanwhile, Shiki's classmates are having a hard time dealing with the undead. Shiki rushes into the room, telling them that the only way to get rid of the undead is with headshots. Jin is the first to figure it out as he unleashes his blood eclipse, relieving the undead of their heads. The others then get the idea, and they start taking out the zombies while the patients are getting evacuated. Shiki falls into a moment of despair as he shoots down the zombies. He is not comfortable with the idea that he is eliminating zombies who were once humans and have families, too. Shiki is totally broken that the zombies are undergoing the process of death all over again. On the surface, Tsubakiri is laughing since he knows that his plan is working. Nato angrily dashes toward him, but just like before, Tsubakiri shields himself with zombies. The Chimera appears beside Nato and almost slashes his head off. but he jumps backward at the last second, and the zombies get squashed instead. Tsubakiri trolls Nato when he notices that he is looking all sad because he just witnessed his colleagues get turned into kebabs. The agents that are still active assure Nato that they are going to back him up whenever he is ready to go after the freak. However, Nato tells the group to head to the evac point while he deals with Tsubakiri and his chimera. Tsubakiri then tells the group that they are not going anywhere. He calls on Yomogi to do her thing. Yomogi steps forward, makes a hand sign, and releases black mist from her body. The black mist surrounds Nato and his colleagues. The black mist then transforms into a cage, and Tsubakiri reveals that they won't be able to leave unless Yomogi grants them permission. Apparently, she has the power to allow anyone in and out of the cage. Tsubakiri then mentions that he planted trackers on the corpses, and with the pings he is getting from the corpses, he has figured out where the Oni agency base is. Tsubakiri turns to leave, and Nato knows what this means. Yomogi grants the chimera permission to enter the cage, and Tsubakiri reveals that he couldn't care less since he has many more even if it gets destroyed. Once the chimera is inside the cage, Tsubakiri activates the explosives he has already planted inside the chimera. The chimera explodes, leaving massive destruction in its wake, destroying Yomogi's cage, too. However, Tsubakiri is still not satisfied with how big the explosion is, as he wants it to be even bigger and more disastrous. Yomogi suggests that they check to confirm if Nato and his colleagues are dead, but Tsubakiri prioritizes his suit, and he doesn't want smoke on it. In the underground base, Shiki and his friends manage to clear out all the corpses. Mei stands in horror as she watches her parents' bodies. Kyoka and Shiki try to comfort her, but she makes things easy for them, telling them that she already expected that a day like this would come. She had always prepared her mind since they were always on the run. She smiles at the group, telling them not to worry about her, but this only pisses Shiki off. Shiki remembers that when he was her age, he believed in superheroes and the fact that the Momotaro were the good guys. Shiki then hugs Mei, assuring her that he is going to become a villain, if that is what it takes to crush the Momotaro, who are the so-called heroes. Shiki promises that he is going to make sure that he builds a world where Mei can smile again. Shiki's determination and speech touch everyone in the room as they all remain silent. Later on, Kyoka and Jin head to the cremation site, which is located in the tunnels entering the base. The others are left to pack the bodies of the zombies. Just then, Juji tells Ikaru that his ability is mainly for scouting. He cuts his hand, drops the blood on the floor, and it starts acting like a radar. Juji explains that he can see everything within a 5-kilometer radius, and he can even know if it is a Momotaro or not. Juji's ability suddenly pings something in the area. Meanwhile, Tsubakiri and Yomogi have infiltrated the restaurant. They have terminated the old woman, who is serving as the caretaker, and they now have access to the tunnel's entrance. Tsubakiri is initially not interested in entering the tunnel, but he changes his mind when he finds out that a particular target of his is currently in the base. And the target he is talking about is none other than Shiki. He is excited to capture Shiki so he can perform his inhumane experiments on him. After Jin and Kyoka finish up in the crematorium, they start heading back to the others. Jin asks about the crematorium, and Kyoka explains that it is needed to take care of their people who die in war, and he lets Jin know that he is about to step into that cruel world, too. Suddenly, Tsubakiri appears behind Kyoka and pushes a knife into him before he can react. Jin unleashes his weapon, but Yomogi restrains him, realizing that they are no match for the two who just appeared. Kyoka tells Jin to head back to Shiki and the others to warn them of the impending threat. After Jin's departure, Yomogi uses her power to create a prison to make sure no one can get out or come into the facility. Even though he is staring danger in the face, Kyoka remains his ever-charming self. Kyoka is having a dumb conversation in his head when Tsubakiri asks him if he knows Shiki. Kyoka ignores the question and pulls out a syringe. The syringe contains Wolfsbane, but before he can get the chance to use it, Tsubakiri dashes toward him and leaves a clean cut on his neck, forcing his red liquid to spill everywhere. Kyoka loses his balance and crashes to the ground. Tsubakiri is disappointed that Kyoka didn't put up a fight before dying. He is about to use his undead power on Kyoka's corpse when he notices the arrival of his chimeras. He orders Yomogi to grant them access. Yomogi raises the barrier for chimeras, and they come bearing a gift for Tsubakiri. They brought a coffin for Tsubakiri, and the coffin contains his most prized experiment. Meanwhile, Jin has made it back to the clinic, and he is shocked to find it practically empty. Shiki reveals that Juji's ability was able to detect the presence of Momotaro in the area. They started evacuating the patients and non-combatants, but just as they were about to finish up, a wall came up, restricting them from leaving. There are only a few of them left, and this is mostly the students and Mei. Ikari suggests that they split up and find a way out, but one of the nurses reveals that she has checked everywhere, and all the exits are blocked. They are still deliberating on what to do when a chimera enters the room. He walks toward one of them, and he foolishly stands there until the chimera gobbles him up like a snack. Seeing their comrade get eaten triggers their dormant sense of survival, and they all dip out of the room. Tsubakiri, Yomogi, and his chimeras finally make it to the clinic hall. He sits on the coffin while he orders his subordinates to wipe out everyone in the facility except Shiki. Elsewhere, Kuina and Rokuro are hiding in the break room. Rokuro is thinking of death as usual, while Kuina is trying to find a good outfit that will not restrict her movements during a fight. Fortunately, she finds a pair of shorts and a top that fits exactly what she wants. Rokuro continues to whine like a baby, and just then, a chimera heads their way. Kuina tells Rokuro that they have no choice but to fight. Rokuro starts to shiver, saying he is useless when he is anxious, and he begs Kuina to handle everything on her own. Kuina hears this and decides to take responsibility because that's who she is. Kuina points to the closet in the room and tells him to hide there while she takes care of the monster. The chimera breaks through the wall, but Kuina remains unfazed, and if anything, she is hyped to fight the creature. The chimera asks her if she is Shiki, but she says no, and this triggers the chimera to go after her. He tries to relieve her of her head, but she dodges everything the creature throws at her, thanks to her agility. During the tussle between the two, the closet falls over, and Rokuro passes out. Kuina soon gets tired of the chimera chasing her around and decides that it is time she takes the fight seriously. Kuina tears her hand and activates her blood eclipse, which comes out in the form of boxing gloves. Meanwhile, one of the chimeras finds Ikari, who is eager for a fight. The chimera asks Ikari if he is Shiki, but this pisses him off, telling the chimera not to put him in the same sentence as Shiki, the loser. The loser in question is running around with Mei, and he picks the best place his dumb brain can pick to hide, which is behind some flowers. When Rokuro regains consciousness, he doesn't hear anything, and he assumes that Kuina has defeated the monster, which means he can now come out of the closet. He excitedly opens the closet door only to find the monster staring at him. He is about to pass out again when he notices that the monster is focused elsewhere. The monster starts listening to Kuina like a pet, and she kicks it to the ground before delivering a barrage of blows to the monster's head to eliminate it. Even after eliminating it, Kuina doesn't feel satisfied, and it turns out that Kuina's blood has a way of putting enemies under her control, making them lose their will to fight. Rokuro is impressed with what he just witnessed, and Kuina reminds him that she already assured him that she is going to protect him because this is who she is. Rokuro thanks Kuina for saving him, and Kuina lays him on a bed like a baby, while waiting for the next chimera to show up. The moment the monster shows up, Kuina is ready to beat some sense into it, as long as it means protecting her glorious king, Rokuro. Kuina is pissed that the monster is coming to ruin her fun, and she tells Rokuro to hide while she engages the monster. The chimera appears to be different from the last as it launches its long arms at Kuina. She dodges and activates her blood eclipse to punch some sense into the chimera, but just as she is about to reach it, the chimera moves and uses its long arm to pierce Kuina's body. It doesn't stop there as it grabs Kuina's arm, restraining her movement. The chimera then throws Kuina around the room until she becomes disoriented, leaving her at the chimera's mercy. The chimera stomps on her repeatedly while Rokuro remains in the closet, having his Zenitsu moment. Rokuro prays that someone appears to help Kuina before she dies, but he is the only one there who can actually help. He stares at his shaking hand, wondering when he became so timid. Apparently, Rokuro once had a crush when he was younger, and her name was Lulu. He enjoys being around Lulu, and because he wants to impress his crush, he does loads of dangerous stuff, even though he is a bit scared. The two lived in a backwater town where there were other Oni like them. Rokuro enjoys dancing with his crush every evening, but she doesn't have enough stamina to stay for long since she is suffering from an illness. Because her Oni horns had appeared, Lulu could not be taken to a human hospital and was only attended to by an Oni doctor who visited the village. However, things go from bad to worse when the Momotaro agency attacks the village, terminating the doctor in the process. Because of this, Lulu lost the only person who could take care of her. Nonetheless, Rokuro remains by her side, assuring her that he will go to the next town to get her a doctor. Lulu no longer has the strength to stay alive. But before she dies, she tells Rokuro that he is cool and that he should remain like that. After saying these words, she dies right in front of Rokuro, completely breaking him apart. Momentarily, her crush's loss gets to him, and he falls into despair. Rokuro's originally black hair starts turning white, and before he knows it, he becomes a pessimistic and anxiety-inflicted fellow. While hiding in the closet, it dawns on Rokuro that he became who he is because of the loss of his friend. Rokuro sees himself as a hopeless fool who can't operate without Lulu. Suddenly, he remembers Lulu's words about how cool he is. He remembers this at the right time as he is able to dash out of the closet and save Kuina just before the chimera impales her. Rokuro admits that Lulu will be disappointed in him if she sees how pathetic he has become. After his crush's death, he has been the opposite of cool. Even though he is still scared, transforms into the one person who can give him strength, and this is Lulu. Lulu hugs him from Rokuro manages to embrace it, and he tears his finger to unleash his blood. His blood behind and changes into a robe on his body. Rokuro wields a fan as his weapon while unleashing loads of blood that have been turned into sharp blades. Rokuro charges toward the chimera and, using his dancing techniques, he relieves the chimera of its hands. Rokuro continues on the offense while imagining Lulu dancing beside him just like old times. Rokuro chases after the chimera and delivers several razor-sharp cuts to its body, toying with it before finally cutting its head off. Rokuro is proud of himself, and he promises to stay cool while Lulu watches him from the other side. Elsewhere, Shiki finally tells Mei to come out from behind the flowers, telling her that the monsters are gone. However, Mei is afraid to come out because she is still riled up with her parents' death and with everything that she has witnessed in the last couple of minutes. Mei mentions that she is tired and would rather join her parents in the afterlife. As usual, Shiki kicks into Big Brother mode and starts to spew his motivational nonsense. He tells Mei to keep on living while assuring her that he is going to crush those who have caused them pain. After he is done motivating the girl, he stands up to leave, telling her to hide if the monsters show up. As he is about to leave, Mei reveals her fear that Shiki will lose, but Shiki assures her that such a thing will not happen because this is what his heart is telling him. Shiki's motivation and refusal to give up get to Mei as her eyes light up with a new sense of hope. On the surface, Nato is called back to life by the Oni warriors standing around him. Nato opens his eyes and immediately gets back up, asking his colleagues how long he has been out of commission. The team tells him that he was out for 15 minutes. They apologize for the inconvenience they caused. They know he got injured because he was protecting them. They are confident that Nato would have been able to handle the situation better if he had not been looking after them. Nato tells them not to dwell on the situation as he starts moving, asking them to follow him. The warriors are confused, asking him where he is headed with his injured body, and he replies that he is going back to the base since his students are still there. Back at the base, Shiki runs into Tsubakiri, who is sitting in the main hall. Just from the way he is sitting and the vibe he is giving off, Shiki immediately figures out that he is the Momotaro agent who can manipulate corpses. Tsubakiri is not interested in whatever Shiki has to say until he realizes that he is Shiki, the one he has been searching for. His face lights up in excitement while Shiki complains about Tsubakiri's sick power that allows him to desecrate corpses. Tsubakiri laughs at Shiki, telling him not to act like a human because Oni are not humans, and they sure have no human rights. This pisses Shiki off, and he whips out his gun, telling Tsubakiri that he is going to end him. On the other hand, Jin runs back to check on Kyoka, but he runs into Yomogi. Yomogi teases him, telling him that Kyoka is dead, but Jin assures Yomogi that he doesn't care about anyone else aside from himself. He unleashes his saw and leaps toward Yomogi. His weapon hits, but Jin notices that he didn't get the feeling that he was supposed to. He turns around and realizes that Yomogi had constructed a wall to block his attack. Yomogi confidently boasts, telling Jin that he will never cut her. In the main hall, Shiki and Tsubakiri are still having a go at each other, but Tsubakiri has disarmed Shiki. Tsubakiri teases Shiki, telling him to use his special blood, and Shiki obliges. He unleashes a big gun from his arm, leaving Tsubakiri totally excited. Shiki aims at him and fires the weapon, leaving a big explosion that rocks the building. However, when the smoke clears, Tsubakiri is still standing, and there is no single cut or damage on his body. He remains beautiful as ever while taunting Shiki to see what he can do. Since Shiki has decided to hit him with something powerful, Tsubakiri also decides to get serious. He opens the coffin, and from inside, his prized puppet steps out, but it turns out to be an undead wearing a Momotaro uniform. Shiki cannot believe that Tsubakiri went as low as turning one of his agents into a puppet, but Tsubakiri calls him an idiot since he doesn't understand what happened. Apparently, the dude absolutely disliked the Oni when he was alive, to the point that he actually offered himself up as a specimen to be experimented on. The pupper unleashes a wave of strange energy from his hand that knocks Shiki to the ground. From Tsubakiri's explanation, it turns out that the puppet can use the power of gravity. Meanwhile, Nato and the other soldiers are trying to get access to the facility, but Yomogi's wall is making it difficult for them. They ask Nato if he can break in, and he says yes, but it is going to be risky. Since there are tourists above the facility, he says they might get hurt. The only solution is to evacuate the civilians, but they don't have the authority like the Momotaro agency. Nato is left in a dilemma when Juji shows up on the scene. Juji informs Nato that he managed to rescue most of their personnel, but the students are trapped. Momentarily, Homer also arrives at the scene. Homer reveals that she was sent to render help, but she doesn't know how. Juji has always had a crush on Homer, and he immediately loses it at the sight of the girl. He starts making moves toward her, and Nato urges him to get his business together. Juji protests, saying getting the girl is very important to him. Nato is about to tell Homer to leave when he realizes that he can actually use the girl. He takes her to the top of the mountain where they can see the tourist center below them. Nato tells Juji that he plans to set off a landslide to force the civilians to run away from the tourist venue. Juji is worried that the landslide might be dangerous, but Nato assures him that no one will get hurt in the process. Nato tells Juji to organize everybody, and once the landslide starts, he and the Oni warriors should get them out. To cause the landslide, Nato tells Homer to summon her savage titan. Homer is shocked and scared at the same time, but Nato assures her that nothing will happen since he is there. Homer continues arguing, saying she doesn't have control over the titan. Disappointed, Nato tells her to forget about it. He reaches out to Juji, telling him that the plan has been cancelled. He then turns around to tell Homer that she has been expelled, letting her know that he doesn't want someone he can't use. Nato is about to leave when Homer stops him, telling him that she is scared that unleashing her power will get someone hurt. Nato then tells her that she is not only affected by fear, but by her refusal to accept change. He mentions that every student has done something that they are not proud of, but they are all working to atone. Nato lets Homer know that she is the only one who has the power to control her blood. After hearing these words from her teacher, Homer summons the courage to summon the Titan. Nato then tells Juji that the plan is back on. Once the Titan spots Nato, it starts attacking him. It punches the ground so hard that it causes everything to erupt, and it automatically triggers a landslide. Once this happens, Juji is able to convince the civilians to run away from the area. Once they are all gone, he informs Nato, and in turn, Nato dodges the Titan before knocking Homer out. The moment Homer loses consciousness, the savage Titan disintegrates. Meanwhile, Yomogi and Jin are still battling it out. Jin gets trapped in Yomogi's wall, and Yomogi assures him that there is no escape for him. She plans to shrink the cage until Jin is crushed flat inside. Jin argues that he will burst his way out, but Yomogi mentions that this is going to take immense mental strength to do. She doesn't believe that Jin has the capacity to do this, but to her greatest surprise, Jin breaks out of the shrunken cage. He tells Yomogi that he once slept in an air duct, so Yomogi's cage is nothing to him. The two are about to tear at each other again when Akari shows up. He just terminated a chimera, and he is absolutely pissed off. Jin tells him to back off, but he is too hyped up to do that. Ikari gets even more interested when he sees the big balloons sitting on Yomogi's chest. He activates his blood eclipse, and Yomogi immediately puts up a wall to stop them. But Ikari reaches her at a blinding speed. Before she can react, she gets kicked in the face. Apparently, Ikari's technique allows him to use his anger as a source to generate various effects. But these effects differ, and even Ikari himself cannot predict what he will summon. This time around, it turns out to be boots, which granted him speed. Yomogi admits that she might have a problem dealing with Ikari. On the outside, Nato uses his power to break down Yomogi's wall. The effect from the destruction leaves the foundation of the facility shaken. Nato tells the warriors to get everyone out quickly because the entire place will soon come down. Nato and the warriors soon find Jin and Ikari facing off against Yomogi. Nato points out the fact that she is outnumbered, and he advises her to surrender. However, Yomogi is a stubborn Momotaro agent, and instead of backing down, she takes off her jacket to prepare for an even more brutal battle. On the other hand, Shiki manages to escape the range of the gravity effect launched by Tsubakiri's puppet. However, he is exhausted from it. Shiki fires another shot from his gun, but the puppet's gravity easily dispels the bullet. The puppet then hits Shiki with a powerful gravity bullet that runs through his body like a 100 G-force. Shiki crashes to the ground in pain, and Tsubakiri mocks him for being weak. Tsubakiri mentions that there is no way he is Kishin's son. When Shiki asks who Kishin is, Tsubakiri reveals that he is the most powerful Oni general in history, and it seems Shiki is his child. When the entire facility starts to shake, Mei remembers Shiki's words, telling her to be brave. She puts the words into action and summons the courage to leave her hiding spot to try and find a way out. At the Momotaro HQ, Samadare meets a new vice captain, Hina, who has been assigned to work with him. Hina talks about how proud she is to be working with the legend, but Samadare urges her not to flatter him. Samadare finally crushes her hope when he tells her that he works alone. Even with the firm rejection, Hina still chases after Samadare. Hina then asks Samadare if he knows anything about the children of Kishin, since she is from the countryside and she doesn't know about the important stuff. Samadare narrates that Kishin was an Oni who nearly wiped out the Momotaro agency. After this, he impregnated many women so he could pass on his power to them. Hina is shocked to hear this, but she asks for more clarification. Samadare explains that there are some who didn't inherit Kishin's power, but those who did are referred to as the children of Kishin. However, the children of Kishin tend to emerge at certain points in time. Suddenly, another weird Momotaro dude, Shinya, appears on the scene. He reveals that the children of Kishin are usually born whenever the Momotaro agency is already dominating the Oni. Shinya is the captain of the 21st unit, and he appears to be a scary, nonchalant dude. Shinya reveals that the appearance of Kishin is why the war has not ended. Shinya is confident that the Oni would have been wiped out a long time ago if not for this. He is also pissed that Honest now have a way to live among humans. Shinya decides to show off as he screams at Hina, telling her about how the politicians connected to the Momotaro also need the Oni to make medicines, which basically makes everything complicated. Shinya also believes that the politicians are basically helping the Momotaro just in case things go south. Shinya then mocks Samadare for getting paired with a noob, who doesn't know anything about their delicate world. He adds more salt to Samadare's injury because he lost an arm during his fight with Shiki. Shinya doesn't hide his desire to take up Samadare's position, and he reveals his plan to terminate one of Kishin's children to raise his rank. However, Samadare warns him not to touch Shiki because he wants to be the one to end him. At the facility, Tsubakiri and his puppet are still busy beating Shiki up. Tsubakiri then narrates that there are 8 children of Kishin, and Shiki is one of them. Tsubakiri reveals his plan to remove Shiki from the chessboard before he awakens the power of Kishin that is dormant inside him. Shiki manages to get back on his feet, and he summons his gun to fire a few rounds at Tsubakiri and his puppet, but none of them land. Shiki is exhausted from this, and he crashes to the ground. Tsubakiri calls him a weakling, and he lets him know that he is going to terminate Mei after ending him. Apparently, Mei has been hiding behind cover, but Tsubakiri knew this. Mei finally shows herself, and she asks Tsubakiri if he was the one who terminated her parents. Shiki screams at Mei, telling her to run away, but Tsubakiri holds her down with the story of how he ended her parents while they were begging to save their precious daughter. Tsubakiri reveals the horrible things he said to Mei's parents, and this causes the little girl to bawl her eyes out. Shiki doesn't want this, and he screams at Mei, telling her to stop crying in front of Tsubakiri because that is what he wants. Shiki berates Tsubakiri and the Momotaro agency for being the real monsters, but this only earns him another wave of gravity punishment from Tsubakiri. Tsubakiri lets him know that he is going to crush his heart, then trash the kid afterward. Shiki knows what is coming from Mei if he doesn't find a way to break away from Tsubakiri's grasp. He remembers the way his father died, and he doesn't want Mei to end up the same way. Shiki stretches his finger in pain, but his sheer will is able to awaken his dormant power. He is suddenly engulfed in fire, shocking Tsubakiri. Apparently, every child of Kishin possesses one unique elemental attribute. There are 8 attributes, which are fire, water, lightning, earth, wind, ice, darkness, and light. With what Shiki just displayed, Tsubakiri figures out that he possesses the fire element, and Kishin kids who possess this element are called Enki. Shiki is confused with the new surge of power burning through him, but he leaves his confusion aside and decides to fight first. He stands back on his feet with the entire room on fire. Tsubakiri can feel the immense pressure coming from Shiki, who was almost dead some minutes ago. Nonetheless, Tsubakiri plans to terminate him before he fully recovers. Tsubakiri is about to use his power when Shiki hits him right in the shoulder with a fire bullet. Tsubakiri is stunned to see this, and he realizes how dangerous Shiki is if allowed to live. Shiki falls to his knees as he suffers from exhaustion. He realizes that he also cannot fully control the power of the flames. Tsubakiri makes fun of him, telling him that things might have been different for him if he were at full strength. Tsubakiri then decides to give his all and finish Shiki with the plan of bringing him back as a corpse for his twisted experiments. Tsubakiri continues crushing Shiki with the gravity power while telling Mei that she is next, just like he did to her parents. Tsubakiri prepares his ultimate attack so he can finish off Shiki and Mei, but Shiki is not about to let this happen. He uses his last strength to summon his gun, but Tsubakiri reminds him that he doesn't have the blood to make bullets again. Shiki lets Mei know that he is praying for her to have a bright and happy future. Mei then supports Shiki with the only thing she has, which is a sincere cry from her heart. The moment Shiki hears the little girl's scream, he gets fired up and unleashes massive firepower that breaks through Tsubakiri's gravity restraints. Mei continues to cheer him on, and Shiki releases an overwhelming flame bullet from his body that consumes Tsubakiri and his annoying puppet. As he lies down in the fire and is about to die, Tsubakiri admits that he underestimated Shiki, which is why he lost. Tsubakiri looks up to see that his puppet, Manaka, is no longer responsive. In a flashback, it turns out that Tsubakiri was a researcher in the agency, but everything changed when Manaka appeared and demanded that Tsubakiri join his unit. Tsubakiri initially rejected this, but he got a mandatory order from above the following day, telling him to join Manaka's unit. Apparently, Manaka was a different breed who cared about everyone, including the Oni that he terminated. He usually prayed for them, but Tsubakiri couldn't comprehend this, since he had lost the warmth in his heart after the death of his parents. His parents also worked for the agency, but they died fighting the Oni. Later on, Manaka noticed this, and he took Tsubakiri to his house. Tsubakiri was shocked to see that Manaka actually has a family. For the first time in a long time, Tsubakiri felt something while he was at Manaka's house. He then asked Manaka why he has a family even though his job is a dangerous one. Manaka reveals that his family is the reason he fights tooth and nail to come back home alive. Tsubakiri doesn't believe in this since he works with the logic that love is a weakness. Tsubakiri's logic ends up coming on right when they raid an Oni home. Manaka hesitated to terminate an Oni kid, and it went on a rampage, eliminating civilians. Manaka's family was also in the area, and before Manaka could get to them, the Oni had terminated his family. Manaka also got injured fatally, and in his dying moments, he agreed with Tsubakiri that Honest should not be pitied. This was when he gave Tsubakiri permission to use his corpse to fight the Onis. By using Manaka's corpse, Tsubakiri quickly rose through the ranks. Now in the present, Manaka is lying unresponsive in front of Tsubakiri, and Tsubakiri regrets not being able to wipe out the Oni as a way of getting revenge for Manaka. Standing in the middle of the chaos is Shiki, and he is glad that he won. Just then, he passes out and crashes to the ground. Mei rushes over to check on him, but all she sees is blood coming out of Shiki's mouth. In the tunnels, Yomogi has locked herself in a cage made from her power, and Nato suggests that they leave her because the building is about to come down. They enter the hospital ward to find Kyoka attending to Shiki. Jin is shocked to see that Kyoka is still alive. Kyoka then reveals that after his neck was cut, he drank some of his own blood, which is why he is lucky to still be alive. Nato then moves over to Tsubakiri, asking him how he feels about Shiki's Kishin power. Tsubakiri admits that it is incredible, but says every time Shiki uses it, it feels like a part of him is being burned away. This is the first time Jin will be hearing anything about Kishin, and he asks Kyoka about it. Kyoka promises to explain to him later. Momentarily, Yomogi enters the building to find Tsubakiri's dead body lying in the ruins. She shed tears for her dead boss since he had just welcomed his daughter into the world. Shortly afterward, Shiki wakes up in an inn that is being run by the Oni. Nato shows up, commending Shiki for taking down Tsubakiri. Shiki is glad he did, but at the same time, he doesn't feel like he won since Mei's parents and other people died. However, Nato tells him that he should be grateful that they even made it out alive. Once they have recovered, Shiki and his classmates get on a boat and head back to the school. During their first lecture back in school, Shiki acts like a maniac and refuses to listen to anything that is being said by Nato. Ikari also loses himself, and he starts sleeping like a goat until Nato himself shows up to flick him hard in the mouth. Moments later, Nato tells the students that they need to pick a partner who will be their roommate. Juji raises his hand, reminding Nato that they are 7, and one person will be left out without a roommate. Nato then reveals that the odd man will have to share a room with him. The moment they hear this, fear grips them because they know that sharing a room with Nato is basically the same thing as being sent to jail. An argument ensues over who is going to share a room with the teacher. Rokuro is the only one who seems to be interested in sharing a room with Nato since he will have someone to protect him when he runs into trouble. Kuina suddenly raises the argument when she mentions that she would like to share a room with Rokuro. Nato ruins Kuina's plan when he says males and females are not allowed to share a room. Kuina tries telling Nato that someone needs to look after Rokuro. Shiki is genuinely confused about what Kuina means by looking after Rokuro. Kuina starts listing a whole load of trash about how she plans to bathe Rokuro and even put him to bed like a baby. The boys almost lost their minds when they realized that Rokuro is such a lucky dude. Shiki finally calls their attention to Homer, but because she is such a timid girl, she suggests that she is going to sleep outside as long as she has a cardboard house over her head. The boys continue arguing until Nato reminds them that they need to decide fast. Shiki then suggests that they decide with rock, paper, scissors. They all come together to throw their options, and Juji ends up being the odd one out. Juji screams out his lungs when he realizes that he is pairing up with the teacher. Shiki, on the other hand, celebrates that he is not getting sent to jail until he realizes that he has ended up with his nemesis, Jin. He holds his head in frustration, but Jin suddenly tells him that he doesn't care if he is Kishin's son or not. Jin tells Shiki not to let the title get to his head. Meanwhile, Shinya has gathered his unit as he aims to hunt Shiki down. Even though Shiki is out of his jurisdiction, he doesn't care because he is determined to climb up the ranks no matter what. Later on, the students find themselves enjoying a nice bath to wash off the stress in their bodies. Jin is the first to leave the room, and while Shiki is still wondering why, Juji disses him, calling him a talkative, which is why Jin left. Juji also walks out of the bath, but Rokuro is scared to leave because he knows that the troublesome Kuina will be waiting for him outside, and he is already tired of the girl doing mummy duties for him. Suddenly, the door flings open, but it is not Kuina. It turns out to be their teacher, who tells them to report to the gym in 10 minutes. As usual, Shiki is the last person to report to the gym, and he claims that he couldn't rush his bath. Nato then tells them that he brought them to the gym for training. He doesn't tell them the nature of the training, but urges them to stay in the gym till further notice while he patrols the school area. After Nato leaves, the kids start to wonder just what they are supposed to be doing. Suddenly, they notice a pot and a tray packed in a corner of the room. While everyone is guessing what it could be, Shiki already assumes that it is a bomb, and he is ready to activate his power to shoot it down before he is stopped. Kuina then walks over to check it out, and it turns out to be food. Without wasting time, the students sit down to enjoy the nice curry soup that has been prepared for them. Jin doesn't waste an opportunity to trash talk Shiki, saying he would have blown up the nice dish because of his paranoia. Shiki tries to shift the blame back to Jin, but Shiki gets serious with his food when he sees Ikari going back to the pot to fetch even more food for himself. Shiki finishes his plate, and he runs over to the pot to join Ikari so that they can both enjoy the food. Rokuro, on the other hand, is trying hard not to eat. He tells Kuina that he gets nauseous whenever he eats too much. However, he is more interested in the pudding that was added to the dish. Apparently, his favorite food is pudding, and Kuina almost shakes him to death when she hears that he is picking food over her. Kuina ends up placing Rokuro's head between her juicy milkers while telling him that she will start making puddings for him to enjoy. On the other hand, Shiki, Juji, Homar, and Ikari are the only ones enjoying extra dishes because, obviously, they are the gluttons. To be free of Kuina, Rokuro is forced to beg her to stop giving him puddings. Just then, Homar calls their attention to the fact that there is an extra pudding. She asks if anyone wants it, and before Jin can talk, Shiki grabs it from her hand. Shiki then offers Jin a plate of curry in exchange for the pudding. While patrolling the school, Nato gets a message from the principal. The principal urges Nato to use the drill as a medium to have some quality time with his students, but he promises to check on them afterward. Nato then reveals that each of the students has their burdens, and it might be difficult for them to make friends with each other. The principal hears this and decides that she is going to find a way to help. Back to the kids, Shiki and Oni have decided that the best way out of their problem is to fight it out. Jin is the first to activate his blood eclipse, and Shiki ultimately follows his footsteps. Jin throws a blood blade at Shiki, but just before it can hit, Nato shows up to stop the attack. Nato cannot believe that the airheads are risking their lives over a pudding. Nato turns around to check the pot, and he is surprised that the kids have finished everything without leaving any for him. Everyone is entirely shocked when they hear this, since he never told them that he would be eating. Homer, the timid girl, falls to her face to apologize, but the others don't care since he didn't tell them beforehand. Nato then decides to take the last pudding for himself. He tells the kids that they are going to remain in the gym till the next day, and he warns them about destroying anything. As he rolls away on his skate, he lets them know that they are not permitted to leave the gym because anyone who leaves is automatically expelled.
I will.
Who's gonna stop me?
The kids don't see any issue with this since they have eaten to their heart's content and can just sleep till the next day. They each pack their sleeping beds, but Jin separates himself from the others. When Kuina insists that Rokuro lie down with her on the same bed, Ikari gets mad and takes matters into his own hands. He wastes no time creating a demarcation to separate the boys' sleeping space from the girls' sleeping space because he is not a fan of relationships. When it is time for them to sleep, Ikari again comes up with the idea that they should go out with ghost stories. Shiki almost loses his mind when he hears this because he passionately fears ghosts, but he doesn't want to confess in front of his classmates. He tries to dissuade them from indulging the ghost story by saying Jin is scared, but Jin ruins it from where he is and says he loves ghost stories. Rokuro is the first to share his ghost story, but it ends up being about Kuina, and this leaves them disappointed. Juji then shares his own story about his life in Nato's room, and how stressful it is, but Shiki still laughs at this. His laugh soon fades away when Ikari takes the throne to share his ghost story, and this is one that involves someone actually dying. Just while he is busy narrating his scary story, the lamp goes out, and when they get it back on, they find a strange figure behind them. While everyone is panicking, Ikari stands up to attack the supposed ghost, but he gets knocked to the ground by the ghost. This further worsens the situation as Shiki loses his mind and unleashes his blood eclipse. He fires his weapon randomly and ends up taking out everyone in the room. In the end, the supposed ghost turns out to be the principal, and she tells Nato to lie to the kids when they wake up that they suffered from nothing more than a weird dream. The next morning, they return to class like drunkards, and this is when Nato tells them that they are going to Tokyo for their next assignment. Soon afterward, they arrive in Tokyo, and Shiki is pissed that they are in the most rural area in all of Tokyo, which is Hikarigyaka. Surprisingly, they have disguised themselves, and they are all using an alias. Nato warns Shiki about breaking the alias's rule. He lets him know that it is a must for them to use the alias. After he is done dishing out the warning, he tells the students that they are going on a tour the next day. However, he gives Shiki a note, telling him that he will have to go for a blood draw after his tour the following day. Shiki is curious about why he needs a blood draw, and Nato explains that they need to do an analysis on his blood component. On their way to the hotel, Shiki spots a festival ground and decides to take a detour, with plans to join his teammates later at the hotel. He excitedly reaches the festival grounds, and he spots some kids in front of the shooting gallery. They want to win prizes, but they can't take down the smallest target to earn the biggest prize. Excited to be involved, Shiki tells the kids that he is going to help them. The stall owner believes that Shiki doesn't have the skills. Without arguing, Shiki grabs the gun and fires it at the smallest target. Surprisingly, he hits it, but someone else hits it with him at the same time. Shiki turns around to see a weird dude standing beside him. It automatically progresses into a competition between the two as they start shooting down all of the targets, leaving the stall owner in despair. The kids cheer for them as they clear out the stall. After the two are done, there is nothing left, and they give the gifts that they won to the siblings. The two then decide to catch up on a public bench. It turns out that the two are gun enthusiasts, and the weird dude finally introduces himself as Mikado. Shiki, on the other hand, remembers Nato's warning, and he drops his alias instead of his real name. As the exciting conversation between the two continues, Mikado reveals that he is a cop, and he proves this by removing his jacket to show the cop outfit that he is wearing underneath. Shiki reveals his disgust for cops, asking him why he became a cop. Mikado then explains that he became a cop because he wanted to protect people. He then points to a suspicious dude walking towards them, and he tells Shiki that the guy is actually good, contrary to his shady appearance. He saw him earlier giving gifts to a kid, and Mikado explains that he might be a cop, but at the same time, he wants to decide for himself whether someone is good or bad. Shiki is impressed by his views on life, but Mikado lets him know that his boss shares a totally different view because he doesn't care about whom he arrests. Shiki says his homeroom teacher is also like Mikado's boss, but he urges Mikado not to change his views just because it doesn't suit what someone else believes in. Mikado's face lights up in shock when he hears this, and he is forced to admit that age truly doesn't mean wisdom. Just as he is about to leave, Mikado suggests that they exchange contacts, and Shiki agrees to this. Mikado asks if they can still go out, and Shiki reveals that he is free the next evening. A message pops into Mikado's phone, and when he checks it, it turns out to be from Shinya, revealing that the dude is a Momotaro agent. At the hotel, Nato has noticed that Shiki is missing, and he personally steps out to drag him back to the hotel. Meanwhile, Shiki and Mikado are both thinking about each other, and they believe that they might end up becoming good friends, since they don't know that they are sworn enemies yet. The following day, Shiki and his classmates begin their tour. The first place they visit is the recon unit, which is disguised as a bookstore. Shiki is interested in going to the Oni safe house in the city, but the store attendant, Kaoru, tells him that it will never happen. Kaoru then starts explaining the three units that exist in the Oni, which are the recon unit, medical unit, and combat unit. Shiki is interested in joining the combat unit, while Homer wants to join the medical unit to help people. Juji then asks Kaoru if it will be okay for them to take notes, since they have a lot of stuff to know. Kaoru then replies that taking notes is useless, which is why they need to store all the information they know in their head. This is all the more reason Kaoru will never tell them where the safe house is, because they might be captured by the Momotaro agency, who will ultimately torture the information out of them. Shiki acts tough, saying he will never sell out the Oni, but Kaoru explains that the Momotaro agency is more complicated than he thinks. He reminds the students that the Momotaro agents also have abilities just like them. This is when it dawns on Shiki and his classmates that the Momotaro might actually have mind-reading abilities, even though it is not confirmed. After they leave the recon unit, the team heads to the Oni medical facility. They find cameras everywhere, and Nato explains that the cameras are linked to the Momotaro, which uses them to monitor everything in the city. By the end of the day, the team has visited all three units, and they are already drained. Nato tells them not to be exhausted yet because they will be stepping out the next day to know more about which unit they want to join. Nato then tells Shiki to head to where he is going to take his blood draw. Shiki reluctantly follows the address written out for him, and he soon arrives at the apartment, where he meets a doctor and researcher, Mary. Mary turns out to be a weird, creepy lady who is ready to get down with Shiki after his blood draw. Since Shiki has never used his sausage before, he panics and runs out of the room to escape the crazy lady. Mary stares at him from the balcony as he walks away, and she wishes that he could dedicate his life to fun because he has a short life to live. Momentarily, Shiki meets up with Mikado, and together, they head to the cinema to see an action movie. After the movie, they retire to a cafe where Shiki cries his eyes out about how sad the movie is. Apparently, it was a movie about two childhood friends who turned enemies and fought against each other on the battlefield, which ended in their deaths. This then makes Mikado ask Shiki if he would fight him, given that they meet on the battlefield. Shiki then replies that he would rather find a way to end the war. However, he confesses that there is someone he is never going to forgive. Just then, Mikado gets a call from Shinya, and he rushes out of the cafe. At the same time, Nato calls Shiki, telling him that there has been an accident. Some minutes before Shiki got the call about the accident, Nato and the other students were walking through the street when Jin noticed that two siblings were about to be crushed by a truck. Jin immediately swings into action to save the kids from being ice-skated. He uses his blood powers to puncture the truck's tire, causing it to swerve off the road, ultimately saving the kids. However, the big sister passes out, and before Jin can investigate, Nato tells him that they need to get off the street since Momotaro is likely onto them already. Just as expected, the Momotaro catches wind of this, and they send the location and feed to all available agents, including Shinya. Nato and the students return to the hotel, and he tells them to pack their things quickly because they are leaving. He contacts Kaoru, who assures Nato that he will get them to the safe house. On the other hand, Mikado has met with Shinya, who wants them to track Jin down to eliminate him. However, Mikado wants them to keep Jin alive, since he used his powers for good and not evil. Shinya is surprised to hear this, and Mikado mentions that he has a private rule of not hurting innocent honest. Shinya doesn't believe that there is a good Oni, as he is already determined to terminate every Oni he comes across. However, Shinya decides not to aggravate Mikado, since he needs his power to take Shiki down. Later on, Nato and the students make it to the safe house, and he mentions that they will be leaving early the next day. The other Honest in the room are not happy with what Jin did, since he basically put all of them in danger. Momentarily, Shiki joins the group, and when he hears the story, he starts praising Jin for saving the kids. Nato lets Jin know that what he did wasn't wrong, but at the same time, it wasn't right. He urges Jin to work on his physical strength so that he can save people next time, without having to use his powers. Jin is in despair because he believes he failed to save the big sister, and he just can't get the whole scenario out of his head. Failing to sleep, he stands up from his bed and steps out. Meanwhile, Shinya makes his way to a club to meet a gang leader, whom he has an affiliation with. Shinya enters the room with no regard for the dude, since he was the one who helped him reach the top of his game. The gang leader then offers Shinya a seat so he can say what he wants. Shinya then shows the gang leader a picture of Jin, telling him to be on the lookout and tell him whatever he finds out about him. After he is done giving out instructions, Shinya offers them all a drink, and the gang members happily accept. Unknown to them, Shinya's power allows him to see through the eyes of those who have ingested his bacteria, and this lasts for 24 hours. The power is so broken that he can actually see through the eyes of 36 people at the same time. One of the gang members is walking past the incident scene when Shinya notices something strange from the corner of his eye. He quickly puts a call through, telling him to look to his left, shocking the dude. The dude does as told, and Shinya is shocked to see Jin standing at the site of the incident. Suddenly, it dawns on him why Jin is probably there, and he calls the gangster again to give him another task. Since he is near a hospital, Shinya tells the gangster to sneak in, because he needs him for something. The gangster initially refuses but cooperates when Shinya tells him that he has proof of him clapping his boss's girlfriend. Meanwhile, Jin visits the hospital to check on the girl, and this is when he learns from the attendant that the girl made it out alive. Jin heaves a sigh of relief as he realizes that he finally did something good with his power. Just as he steps out of the hospital, he is surrounded by gang members, and from a good look, Jin can see that they are not Momotaro. They demand that he enter their bus, and if he doesn't, they already have someone in the girl's room, ready to terminate her. Realizing that they are not messing around, Jin has no choice but to enter the bus, and he is taken to where Shinya is waiting for them. There is a back room inside the club, and this is where they take Jin. Inside the room are several pain-inflicting equipment, and Jin soon finds himself restrained to a chair. Shinya interrogates him to see if he knows Shiki, but Jin keeps his mouth shut. However, Jin is able to figure out that Jin has some connections with Nato, since Yomogi already filled him in on this earlier. Since Nato is in town, Shinya easily figures out that Shiki is going to be with him. Shinya screams at Jin to try and scare him, but Jin doesn't scare easily. Shinya then decides to use the girl, leaving Jin to ask him why the Momotaro is dragging innocent civilians into their war. However, Shinya teases Jin by saying his hands are clean and there is nothing tied back to him about civilians being involved. After Shinya is done with Jin, he steps out of the room and tells the gang leader to keep an eye on him. Deep down, Shinya is worried that he and Mikado might not be enough to take on Nato and Shiki. Shinya then puts a call through to Mikado, asking that they meet up. At the same time, Nato and the students find out that Jin has vanished from the safe house. The students already know that the Momotaro are involved, but they are not scared to track down their colleague and rescue him, even though the Momotaro in the town are the worst kind. Soon afterward, Shinya and Mikado head to the office of the 20th unit of the agency to meet the captain, Yomi, and Osuke to seek their help. The captain is initially uninterested in whatever deal he has until he learns that it is about Kishin's child.
Guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, please leave a comment in the comment section. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Like the video and share it too. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.